boys.
This is Father Sean Conroy and Father John Nepil. They're known throughout the Archdiocese for their faithful service to Jesus Christ, and you might have heard them on their podcast, Catholic Stuff You Should Know. When they're not busy shepherding souls, their idea of a fun day off is climbing the tallest mountains in Colorado with groups from all over the Archdiocese, and celebrating Mass at the peaks. This year, Father Sean finished climbing every 14er, and Father John finished saying Mass on every 14er peak in the state.
So this was the final summit of Holy Cross. It was my last 14er period. It was Father John's last 14er to celebrate Mass on top of. And so this is our buddy Casey and Steve with us, and they're filming as we made it over the summit.
That was an epic moment, and a very cold one at that. So the sun's out so you can see it, but we were shaking through the end of that Mass. So
we looked like Teletubbies. So,
that was the feast of
Guardian Angels.
So I think it was in early October 2nd. October 2nd, yeah. Finished it off. We were originally, the whole plan was to finish the 14ers
on the Feast of the Holy
Cross on Mount of the Holy Cross, and we had projected this kind of the last 5-year stretch. We had a lot of mountains to climb, 54 14ers, and then this huge blizzard came in and it was impossible. So we just said no, and we kicked it back 3 weeks, went for it. But even then, it was snowing when we started up.
That's right, yeah.
In October.
But it was beautiful with the fall foliage and everything. All the leaves had changed, and so it was definitely cold, but it was sun shining all day until we got to the summit, and then the clouds blew in.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was a day. You won't forget that one for sure. The reason it's named the Holy Cross, Mount Holy Cross, is because on the side of it, kind of, let's see, that'd be the southeast side, there's a huge couloir. So imagine a big cut in the side of the mountain where snow stays late in the year. So it's June, it's melted off everywhere except for this long slash in the side of the mountain, and all the way from, it's maybe about 2,000 feet down, but then horizontally as well, so there's this huge cross and the sign of. In the 19th century, there was a lot of kind of, there was a famous painting that came out about Holy Cross, and it set this kind of sense of like the manifest destiny and the American dream in the West, and so it's a pretty iconic mountain. What year were you born?
1994.
Okay, you were 3 when I climbed my first 14er. I got forced to, I hated hiking as a kid. I just thought this is the most boring thing ever. And I got forced to go on a 14er trip. It was my brother's Boy Scout group, and I was like the random brother, just got tagged into it. And
did you forget something?
I did. So Sean knows the story. I also wrote a book on this, and it's coming out. It's under contract, so it's going to be a long ways out, but on the 14ers on the Conroy Trail. So all these stories are recounted in it. But this one, very briefly, my setting up tent with my dad at the foot of Mount Albert, and I realized very quickly, I'm going through my stuff, forgot my sleeping bag. And it's cold, it's like early September. And so as pathetic as possible, I look at my dad and I'm just like, Dad, I forgot my sleeping bag. And he looks at me, my dad went to West Point, and he's a career military officer. And he says, tonight you're gonna learn a life lesson. So I did, learn the life lesson, worst night of sleep ever, hated it, got up the next morning, climbed Mount Albert, hated it, swore I'd never do it again. That was the first one. The rest is history, so.
So I grew up in a very active family, a lot of skiing, hiking, biking, things like that, but never the 14ers, never camping. Actually, my first 14er was when I was a Totus Tuus teacher, 2012, and Father John was the Totus Tuus leader, teacher. What did you call yourself?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, so he trained.
The apparently responsible adult, which is scary.
The responsible adult who trained all the teachers how to teach for Totus Tuus, and so he took on midsummer break all of us teachers up Mount Huron Peak.
That's right.
And so that was my first 14er in 2012, and I just caught the bug of just being, and there's a whole craze in Colorado, obviously, for the 14er culture, which we could certainly talk about. I don't love that culture, but we're kind of a part of it, I guess, and I caught the bug, and always wanted to finish since then.
Oh, that's a very memorable spot.
It is a very memorable spot.
The knife's edge on Capitol Peak.
That's right. Yeah, so Capitol Peak, this is probably my all-time favorite. It was just a great day. We weren't together that day. I was with some friends from the parish, and we just had an amazing day, blue sky all day. But Capitol Peak is famous for what's called the knife's edge. So about, I don't know, halfway up, something like that, you kind of bend around this elbow of the mountain, and then you get up, climb over something called K2, climb down, and then you get to this knife's edge, and it's about, 100 yards of just on either side, there's like a 1,000-foot drop, and it's pretty sharp in the middle. That's what I call it, knife's edge. And so you kind of gotta like straddle it and put one leg on one side, one leg on the other, and just kind of scoot across. And so it's a really exposed and kind of sketchy area, but it's so iconic. And so that's usually one of the hardest ones that people talk about.
Yeah, and it might even be more than 1,000 feet. It might be more like 2,000 feet. I mean, it's an absolute sheer drop on both sides. I don't think there's anything like it in the state. This big granite piece, but this one section is just completely shaved down. So it's nuts.
It is nuts.
Yeah. It's a great one though. There's a great season called Coular season that we get excited about every year, which is kind of end of May, early June. And Coulars are what we were talking about earlier, Mount of the Holy Cross, that coular, that big kind of cut in the side of the mountain. So this is looking down one of them, this coular where the snow stays and the conditions are really good. And so instead of doing long hikes up over kind of rocky terrain, you just go right up. And if the snow is good, it's beautiful. Put on crampons and grab an ice axe. And we've had it's one of our favorite times of year to climb, really. Yeah. And this photo is fun because right after this was your first 14er Mass.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, so Grace Peak, I was ordained a priest for like 2 weeks. And so after ordination, you have about a month off, and I'm like, what are we gonna do? We're just like, let's hike some 14ers. It's May, Coular season. And so all my buddies were just like, okay, do not die. You haven't even been in the parish yet, you know?
You're a priest forever though if you do die.
That is true.
And that was a cold one too. Yeah, that's Little Bear, right? Mm-hmm. Little Bear is arguably the most technical peak, pretty dangerous because of the rock fall, it's just kind of crummy rock. And so by this point, the headlamps are on. It looks light, but we've been hiking probably since 3 a.m.
Yeah.
So we did the first couple hours to get up to the snow. This is hiking in May. You want to get into the hourglass and do it as a snow climb to avoid all the rock fall, but you got to get in there early so the snow is all set. So that's why, yeah, Sean is there with his headlamp on. And
this is actually on my anniversary, 2nd year anniversary.
Yeah.
And so Little Bear, this was kind of like the last hard 14er that we had to do together. And so again, the iconic hourglass, and then you kind of get up, it comes to the choke, you know, barely wide enough to kind of pass through, and then you get up top, we had Mass, and then you're not over yet. The scariest part was descending.
We did this was May of last year, so it was
2023.
In 2013, I went up to do this, and I got all the way to the top, and I forgot my host, but got all the way to the top, and this atheist Jewish guy who was a friend of my friend who's on the ride, he felt really bad for me because I was like really upset. I was like, you just got to the top of the hardest peak in the state of Colorado, and you forgot the hosts. You can't say Mass up here. And the guy puts his arm around me and goes, sorry, you forgot your biscuits, man. And I was like, my biscuits.
My biscuits, yeah.
So we went back and we triple checked the biscuits, and we had Mass on top. That was a great one.
It's great.
I have never done a 14er solo. Never done one by myself. There's always people who are interested, and it's just, especially as priests, we just want to share that. Mm-hmm. We can especially share the Eucharist at the top. Yeah. So we've had hundreds and hundreds of people with us over the years, and that's just, it's part of sharing life. And in the seminary, we do a 14er trip at the beginning of the year, and it's just, there's something that kind of bonds you together when you suffer hardship, but also experience that kind of glory together. And it's a different way of evangelizing too. I was a college chaplain at the University of Colorado, and it became very clear that a lot of these kids do not want to come to Mass, and they're not going to come to Mass. But if you say, hey, we're going to the mountains and we're going to hike some 14ers, then all of a sudden they're interested. And then all of a sudden you start having conversations, and they're at Mass. They find themselves asking the questions. So I just think that we have to get people out of their kind of comfort zone, and the mountains are a great way to do that. And the Eucharist just at the summit, it's hard to express. I mean, we call it the source and the summit of our faith, the Eucharist. And it really, there's something about it. You feel that we are at the summit here, both spiritually and physically, and there's a kind of way that it just comes together. It's hard to explain. We sound like hippies.
Yeah.
But it's just, it's unbelievable. And there's nothing above you except the Father. And it's just Christ, the sacrifice of Christ being offered on behalf of the whole world, all of creation reconciled in the Eucharist, just right there, handed off. We're at the pinnacle of everything. Nothing better. One of my favorite names for the Eucharist or the Mass is the sacrifice of praise. We say that in Eucharistic Prayer 1. And that's a really ancient idea, but I like how it brings together sacrifice and this notion of praise. Praise is Todah in the Old Testament. Todah means confession, it means thanksgiving, it means praise. It's just everything kind of being offered. And so there's something about the mountains that elicit out of us an offering. We have to make a gift of ourselves, an offering of ourselves, in order to ascend to the high places. You can't just get up there. It wouldn't be the same if a helicopter just dropped us in. And so the sacrifice involved in that does actually facilitate a different kind of giving praise. And praise is the most natural, spontaneous, and even kind of reckless prayer. It's just something we just do. It's those moments of total awe and really abandonment to beauty. And that just happens. So it happens all the time when you get above tree line. You just start to see the expansiveness of the universe and the grandeur of creation, and you feel your own smallness. And so you simultaneously are making this sacrifice of praise as you're ascending the mountain to the Lord, but then you're also realizing like just how small we are, and yet how deeply loved and how infinite the love of God is that's poured into our lives. So there's a lot of kind of paradoxical movements that happen, but spiritually it's so rich.
I think one of the challenges in our world today is we live such fast-paced lives, such busy lives, that when I go to Mass on Sunday or even during the week, it's just a snippet in time. And it's just like, even when I'm at Mass, even as priests, we can struggle with this of just like, oh, here's just something I have to do, I do it, and then I move on to the next thing. And one of the things that's so powerful is the actual journey of the hike. It's not just the summit mountaintop experience, it's also the journey of like waking up at 4 a.m. and drinking cold water from the river and purifying the water and making the oatmeal and all that stuff in the morning. And then you have an arduous hike. This isn't easy, you know? You wake up and you're sweating and you needed food and for the journey and all that stuff. And almost like it takes you out of, okay, I'm not sitting down doing emails right now. I don't have that next thing on my mind. All I have on my mind is putting one foot in front of the other. And it's very peaceful. And then you get to the top, and then it's this experience of the divine, of the summit, of the Lord, of the Father above us, as Father John was just saying. And that reality, I think, is so powerful that you're actually able to enter into Mass in a deeper way and experience the divine in a much more powerful way than when we're just kind of going through the motions of busyness of life. And so part of the way that we've desired these is to take people into the back country for the sake of evangelization and say, get rid of your phone, get rid of the access that you have to YouTube and TV all the time, and let's just like be together. Let's have community together. It's any backcountry trip we take. Certainly the 14ers have been a huge gift and super fun to do together, but we also do winter trips, to these backcountry huts and different things like that, to get out of the city and to just be with each other and then ultimately with the Lord.